There was a time when the muscle car was on its last legs. Emissions regulations had choked the life out of powerful engines, and fuel shortages had made performance a luxury. But in the midst of this automotive malaise, a beacon of hope emerged from the unlikely source of a humble Chevrolet Camaro. In 1981, the Camaro Z28 was a shadow of its former self. Its once mighty 350 cubic inch V8 engine had been neutered by government mandates, and its performance was lackluster at best. But one man, Don Yenko, refused to accept the status quo. With a legendary history of transforming ordinary Chevrolets into extraordinary performance machines, Yenko set out to revive the Camaro's spirit. The Z28 badge on a Camaro is one of the most iconic nameplates in the American car world. That badge has adorned so many different body styles over the years, but not all of them shared the same performance pedigree. The second-generation Camaro Z28S, built from 1970 to 1981, are some of the most popular, but the Z28 Camaro was a very different car in 1981 compared to its 1970 counterpart. In 1970, the Z28 made a very respectable 360 horsepower and 380 foot-pounds of torque from its 350 cubic inch small block V8. By 1981, though, power from the same size 350 small block was down to just 175 horsepower. Even worse, quarter-mile times were now in the 16-second range. It looked like the days of high-performance American V8s were gone, thanks to increased emissions regulations and intermittent fuel shortage. But there was one faint glimmer of hope on the horizon for American performance after all, and that was a series of very special dealer-built turbocharged Z28 Camaros that brought American V8 performance back in a time when it was needed most.
Surprise, mother...
And the dealer that built these Camaros was none other than the famous Yenko Chevrolet. This is the story of the 1981 Yenko Camaro Turbo Z. Don Yenko and his Pennsylvania dealership were no strangers to building some of the baddest General Motors cars around. The Yenko Corvairs, Novas, Camaros, and Vegas have become the stuff of legends in the automotive community. In 1981, Yenko and his team knew that even though the automakers had choked all the fun out of their cars, that didn't mean the buyers weren't still looking for something fast. Only this time around, there were no high-performance big block or special order options that Yenko could tick a box for on an order form. The hottest motor they could put in the Z28 was the 175 horsepower 350, so they had to get creative. That need for creativity led them down the rabbit hole of turbocharging, which was becoming an increasingly popular phenomenon. General Motors had experimented with turbocharging their Corvairs back in the 60s, and in the early 80s, they had introduced a 3.8-liter turbocharged Buick V6 and the turbocharged 301 Pontiac V8 in the Turbo Trans AM. Around this time, Nissan had also begun implementing a turbocharger on its new 280Z Ekas as well. The writing was on the wall. Turbochargers were here to stay, and Yenko was set on using a turbocharger to boost the power of these anemic Z28s. Yenko worked on a deal with the turbo manufacturer Turbo International to utilize their turbochargers on his new Turbo Z28s. This installation was done using what is called a blow-through setup, which means that the turbocharger forced air directly into the carburetor. This was a much more primitive setup than the turbocharged Buick Grand National had with its fuel injection system, but it got the job done nonetheless. The Yenko Turbo Zs would run 7 pounds of boost through their turbocharger and would not use a wastegate. The Z28s had a factory low compression ratio of just 8.2 to 1, which actually made it a decent candidate to turbocharge. Interestingly, Yenko himself never actually published an official horsepower figure for the turbocharged Camaros. Estimates slot the total horsepower of these Yenko Turbo Zs somewhere between 250 and 300 horsepower. The closest reference point to the Yenko Turbo Z would be the comparable 301 Pontiac Turbo Trans AM, which made 210 horsepower from its turbo 4.9-liter V8. These Trans Ams clocked the quarter mile in the high 16 to low 17-second range. When compared to the Yenko Turbo Z's 14.5-second quarter-mile time, it's clear that the Yenko car had to have made way more power than the Trans Am. All Z28 Camaros equipped with the 350 cubic inch motor were paired to a 3-speed TH 350 automatic transmission. The Yenko Turbo Zs also all packed a 10-bolt rear end with a set of 3.08 gears. On the performance side, there were actually 2 stages of Yenko Turbo Z cars offered to customers, a Stage 1 and a Stage 2 car. The Stage 1 car was the generic Turbo Z that featured the upgraded engine with interior and exterior modifications. The Stage 2 cars were built more as sports cars than straight-line cars. All the Stage 2 Turbo Zs got got Coney shocks, new wider wheels and tires for improved lateral grip, and more chassis stiffening mods to make the cars more rigid in the corners. On the exterior, you could tell a Yenko Turbo Z apart because of its revised and lengthened front fascia, plus its very 80s style turbo writing pretty much all over the car, so everybody in a 6-mile radius knew that your car was turbocharged just by looking at it. The interiors of the Stage 1 cars featured minor modifications, mainly to the instrument cluster and the dash to house the new boost gauge and other additions. The Stage 2 cars got all the Stage 1 interior options, plus upgraded leather and a nicer, more sporty steering wheel. These Yenko Turbo Zs were some of the coolest and fastest cars that you could buy new in the early 80s. So how come you and I have never seen one out in the wild in real life? Well, that's because there were just 19 of them ever made. 16 Stage 1 Turbo Zs and just 3 Stage 2 Turbo Zs. Yenko did initially set out to build a lot more than 19 of these turbo Camaros, but the main problem that prohibited sales of these cars ended up being the price. A Stage 1 Turbo Z would ding the buyer's bank account for a full $11,000, and Stage 2 cars would cost a staggering $17,500 in 1981 money. For reference, a base model Z28 cost $8,000, so at the Stage 2 level, you would be paying more for modifications to the car than you would be paying for the underlying car. These Yenko Turbo Zs would actually end up being the final Camaros ever built by Yenko himself, as Yenko Chevrolet closed its doors just a year later in 1982. Today, these Turbo Zs are some of the rarest of all the Yenko-built Camaros. In fact, the whereabouts of some of them are actually still unknown. When I was doing research on this car and browsing through Google and all the other websites, I could only find a handful of recent pictures of these cars. One even popped up for sale randomly in New Jersey a couple of years ago, but no one knows really what happened to that car, so it's still very likely that there are a couple of these incredibly rare Yenko Turbo Z Camaros out there just waiting to be found. The Yenko Turbo Z stands as a testament to Don Yenko's ingenuity and passion for performance. In a time when the muscle car was seemingly on its last legs, Yenko managed to create a vehicle that defied expectations. The Turbo Z's combination of power, rarity, and unique styling has made it a beloved icon among muscle car enthusiasts, a true turbocharged time capsule from an era when American performance needed it most. The impact of the Yenko Turbo Z on the automotive world was significant. Despite its limited production, it demonstrated the potential of turbocharging as a means of enhancing performance, even in the face of restrictive emissions regulations. The Turbo Z's success paved the way for other manufacturers to explore turbocharged engines in their muscle cars, influencing the future of American performance vehicles. Today, the Yenko Turbo Z is a highly sought-after collector's car. Its rarity and historical significance have driven up its value over the years. Finding an original, well-preserved Turbo Z can be a challenging task, as many examples have been modified or restored over the years. For collectors and enthusiasts, owning a Yenko Turbo Z is like possessing a piece of automotive history, a reminder of a time when innovation and determination could overcome even the most challenging obstacles. The legacy of the Yenko Turbo Z lives on, serving as a reminder of the power of innovation and the enduring appeal of high-performance automobiles. It stands as a symbol of American ingenuity and the never-say-die attitude that has defined the muscle car era. In many ways, the Yenko Turbo Z was ahead of its time, predicting the future of forced induction in performance cars that we see today. Don Yenko and his team created a turbocharged legend that still captures our imagination today in a period when performance seemed all but dead. The Turbo Z still reminds us that even in the darkest times, there will always be those who will push the boundaries and keep the spirit of performance alive. It's a testament to the passion and creativity that drives the automotive world forward, even in the face of seemingly insurmountable challenges. And that'll be it for today. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel for more interesting stories of rare and incredible cars. Until next time, keep your engines revving and your eyes on the road. See ya!